Neptune in Aries marks the transition from idealizing the martyr to idealizing the leader, the hero, the spiritual warrior. With Neptune transiting Pisces over the last 14 years, the victim became the idol and the scapegoat, depending on the ground where they stood. But this is about to shift. As Neptune moves into Aries, we begin to both glorify and place blame upon a completely different archetype. The brave, the bold, the independent, and yes, even the aggressive. The one who takes action, the one who leads. But Neptune in Aries will not exist in a vacuum. Neptune's early years in the sign of Aries are entangled with some rare and powerful astrological configurations, including a conjunction with Saturn in the sign of Aries, the sign of its fall, and two long-lasting, many years long sextiles with Uranus and Pluto. This is what astrologers call a minor triangle. Saturn and Neptune's transit sets the stage for a collective reset, the likes of which we've never seen in this lifetime. And this all culminates on February 20th of 2026 when these two outer planets come into an exact conjunction in the sign of Aries for the first and only time. This transit is a double-edged sword. Saturn in Aries challenges us to take personal responsibility for our actions and to do so very quickly. Aries is impulsive. It wants results now. But Saturn demands structure, patience, and discipline. The tension between speed and sustainability, impulse and integrity will define this era. And the consequences of cutting corners can be massive. So what does this all mean for us personally and collectively? In this video, I'm going to give you a much deeper understanding of what's going on here with both Saturn and Neptune transiting the sign of Aries and how it's going to impact us both collectively and you personally based on your sun, moon, and rising sign. I'm going to show you exactly how to step into your role as a conscious leader in a world that's being completely redefined. And before we go even deeper, I just want to remind you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so you never miss an important astrology update. I post a new forecast or astrology tutorial every single Saturday, and so you don't want to miss that. And if you want to go even deeper into how to understand how the Saturn and Neptune transit through the sign of Aries is going to impact you and your birth chart way more personally, way more in detail, make sure you download my free Astrology 101 quick reference guide. The link is down in the description below. This is 100% free of charge. This is going to walk you through how to not only pull up your birth chart if you don't already know how to do that, but how to understand the different symbolism in the birth chart, how to understand what you're actually looking at, how to find your personal astrology placements. This is going to be key to understanding in really great depth, in really great nuance, what's to come for you for the next 2.5 years with Saturn in the sign of Aries, and also for the next 14 years with Neptune in the sign of Aries. And so you don't want to miss out on this. Again, 100% free of charge down in the description below. Okay, so let's start by breaking down Saturn transiting the sign of Aries. Now, this doesn't start until May 24th of 2025, but it lasts until April 12th of 2028. The last transit of Saturn through Aries was from April 7th of 1997 through February 28th of 1999. And so thinking back to what was going on in your life in terms of challenges, restructuring, lessons, hardships, difficulties, delays, the area where you felt like you had the most pressure, the most weight on your shoulders, that is going to help you to understand what you are working on and working through and working on restructuring this time around while Saturn transits the sign of Aries. While last time around Neptune was not in the mix in the same way, this time around there's going to be this kind of push and pull between dissolving old structures, dissolving boundaries, because Saturn is structure, Saturn is rules, regulations, restrictions, Saturn is very literally boundaries and borders. You're going to be working on dissolving some of those with Neptune, and you're going to be working on rebuilding or building new structures, new foundations, new boundaries, new borders when it comes to that Saturn component. And sometimes it's going to be a little difficult to understand where you need to break things down, where you need to dissolve, and where you need to rebuild or make things stronger. And a lot of that is because Neptune is in the mix. These two transits, Saturn and Neptune and Aries, are not inseparable. They go together, especially at the very beginning, especially in 2026, but really all throughout this transit because they are co-present in the same sign. So you cannot look at Saturn and Aries without looking at Neptune and Aries. And for the first 2.5 years, 3 years, you cannot look at Neptune and Aries without also looking at Saturn and Aries. So by just looking at what Neptune is doing in Aries, you're not going to understand what's happening for the next 2.5 years, because it's not going to work in the way that it would if you're just looking at it as if it's just Neptune. And so that's why we're kind of diving into both of these together. I know a lot of astrologers are looking at Neptune separately, and it will be its own separate thing eventually. But for right now, for the here and now, and for the next 3 years, we have to look at these together. And so with Saturn transiting Aries, it's going to be a revisiting of similar themes from 1997 to 1999, but they're not going to be exactly the same, because last time around Neptune wasn't also in Aries. And so this time around there is going to be a more nebulous, murky, almost fearful kind of energy with Neptune in the sign of Aries. That Neptune-Saturn conjunction, that combination, we've already been experiencing that in the sign of Pisces, and it feels like this free-floating fear almost. It feels very karmic, it feels dark, it feels deep. In the sign of Aries, it's going to feel a little less malleable and murky, and a little bit more about, oh, I need to take action, but not always knowing exactly what action to take, not always knowing what responsibilities you need to uphold and which responsibilities you need to let go of. And with Saturn in the sign of Aries, it is always going to be weakened because Saturn is at its fall position. What this means is that Saturn is at its best, most optimal performance in the sign of Libra, which is the opposite sign of Aries. When Saturn is in Libra, it is exalted, it is supported, it is able to do what it wants to do with all of the help that it needs from the energy of that sign. When Saturn is in Aries, it's the exact opposite. It's like Saturn is on its own. It does not have the help from Aries to slowly and methodically and in a self-disciplined way create those structures that it needs to create in order to build what needs to be built for our foundations moving forward in the area of life that is going to be impacted by this Saturn transit through Aries, which we'll talk about in the forecast for all 12 signs. And so there is already a challenge there. It's like Saturn wants to build something, but Saturn always requires that you do things the right way, not the fast way. Aries is the exact opposite. And Aries' influence on Saturn, or Saturn being kind of like filtered through the lens of Aries, is having to speed things up, having to take shortcuts, having to cut corners, having to engage with this impulsivity of like, this needs to happen now. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to happen. And that is going to bite us in the butt later on. And so there is this energy here of, yes, there's momentum. Yes, we have to move forward. Yes, a lot is being built and rebuilt all at once, but rushing it, pushing forward into it before it's ready, before it's matured, that is going to cause problems. And so we do have to consciously, very consciously, find that balance between rushing forward, because things are going to have to happen very quickly. It's going to feel like we are all of a sudden being under all of this weight, all of this pressure, all of this new responsibility, all of these new observations about how we're behind in certain areas of our lives. And also having to deal with the fact that if we want to do this right, it's not going to happen in the speed that is required right now, because there is going to be a need to like do some of this stuff right now. And it might require that you redo it later on when Saturn, let's say, moves into the sign of Cancer in a few years, in about 7.5 years. When Saturn moves into the sign of Cancer, and all of a sudden you have a Saturn square to this position that it was when it was transiting the sign of Aries, and those structures, those foundations that were not set properly are starting to crumble, and you're going to have to work much harder to rebuild. That's going to be a big part of this. So you're going to want to find that middle ground. You do have to rush into things. Good enough in some circumstances is going to be okay. But just know that what you're creating is going to be on a shaky foundation, and later on down the line, because Saturn, it takes time, right, for these cracks to show. Later on down the line, you might have to put in some extra work, and it might be 10 times harder than it needed to be as a result of this. So Saturn in Aries is a difficult energy already. And with that Neptune involvement, Neptune is like the opposite of Saturn, basically. Not the exact opposite. I would say Jupiter is more the opposite of Saturn. But if you look at like what actually Neptune does, it's the most intangible, it's the most malleable, it's the most nebulous, it's the most interconnected, it's the most imaginative, it's the most like non-tangible, non-realistic energy of all of the planets. And Saturn is about function, form. It's about what's real, tangible, logical. It's about the rules, the regulations, the boundaries. It actually is the boundary between the seen and unseen planets in our solar system. Saturn is the last of the visible planets that we can see with the naked eye without a telescope. And so it has this symbolism of being this like boundary between taking what's imagined or what's intangible or what's other dimensional and translating that into something that has form and function and what's actually real and logical and grounded here on Earth. And it's just like, it's the opposite. Neptune, it dissolves all of that. Neptune is like, I don't care what's realistic. I care what's fantastical. I care what's idealistic. I care what my visions are. I care how things feel. I care about what's interconnected and compassionate. Saturn's like, no, I care about like, this is your responsibility. And so this is an interesting combination. In terms of the way that this will impact the collective, so last time Saturn was transiting the sign of Aries, again, from April 7th of 1997 to February 28th of 1999, there were some interesting themes that are coming back around right now. The first was the rise of Vladimir Putin. And so, there's a lot going on right now between the US and Russia, and Vladimir Putin obviously is a big component of that. And so he became the head of Russia's security service in 1998 and was appointed prime minister in 1999. And so he's coming into his first Saturn return in respect to his rise to power, that time period where that happened for him. And so he's going to be going through some difficulties, some challenges, dark night of the soul, a rectifying of sorts, because that's what happens when you have that Saturn cycle, when you have that Saturn return in your birth chart. But the Saturn return of any major event, major milestone in your life is going to cause you to face challenges in relationship to that milestone. And so he's going to have challenges in relationship to his position, his power, his authority, his control over the government. And it's going to be a time of like looking back over what happened over the last 30 years, what worked and what didn't, and having to break some things down, like having to come to terms with what his role and what was created, basically. And so that will reflect on the world stage. That absolutely will. That's a personal thing, but it's also a collective thing because this is about somebody who is a leader, who is in a position of extreme power. And we also had a couple more things that were interesting during that time. There was an economic shakeup, collapse in certain parts of Asia and in Russia that happened around this time. It was also the lead up to the dot-com bubble. And so it was like this boom and bust energy around the dot-com like rise and all of that. And then we also had the US bombing of Iraq. So that was like a measured use of military power. And when we look at Saturn and Aries, Aries is war. Aries is an aggressive, warlike energy. It's wanting what you want in your way. It is an energy about the warrior, the leader, the hero, the person that's in power. And so there is that energy there. And then also we had the Clinton impeachment, which I just thought was interesting. I don't know if that's something that's relevant that's going to happen this time around necessarily, but I just thought it was kind of like an interesting little side note there. But the main things I noticed were like, okay, the Russia situation then and the Russia situation now, this energy of war and aggression, this kind of coming full circle moment, and war in the Middle East. So those are the first things with Saturn and Aries. We're going to combine this with Neptune and what went on with Neptune and Aries in just a second here. But this is kind of what we can expect on the world stage is revisiting some of these themes in a new way and having to deal with the repercussions of what happened the first time around and actually take responsibility to create or build or rebuild or work on something new. So what was handled in the past, the way it was handled in the past, the cracks in that foundation are going to be showing really abruptly and overtly over these next couple of years. So now let's take a look at what Neptune is doing. Neptune is the planet of illusion, disillusionment, imagination. It's the planet that's most closely associated with spirituality and spiritual practice, other dimensional realities, and things that are just full of high, strange energy. Neptune is the planet of martyrdom. It's the planet of victimhood. It's the planet of not seeing things for what they truly are. When Neptune is involved, you see what you want to see. You'll project energy onto other people, other things, other situations that is not necessarily related to the objective reality of what stands before you. And so this energy of Neptune, wherever it places, or wherever it transits, I should say, in your chart, is going to create this murkiness, this inability to really understand in a logical, truthful, down-to-earth way the facts of what's going on in your reality, the facts of what's going on in that area of life that's being impacted. And Neptune in the sign of Aries is very different than Neptune in the sign of Pisces. In the sign of Pisces, Neptune is in its modern rulership. Modern rulership is not the same as actual traditional rulership. It's not actually that Neptune rules the sign of Pisces. Neptune has an affinity, a connection to the sign of Pisces. And so it does tend to operate, quite well in that sign. There's a lot of congruency. There's a lot of energy that supports Neptune when it's transiting the sign of Pisces, because Pisces is a sign of spirituality, compassion, interconnectedness. And Neptune is just this energy that globs everything together into one big confusing lump. And so they do kind of work well, right? And Neptune rules things like film, fantasy. It's this energy of imagination. And obviously Pisces is very intuitive, very imaginative. And so they can work quite well together. With Neptune in the sign of Aries, it's a little bit different. Aries is very ambitious, very goal-oriented, very initiatory. Aries is very strong-willed. It's about taking action. It is a fire sign ruled by Mars. It's about go, 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 doing things in the physical reality, having a lot of enthusiasm, maintaining that enthusiasm, and taking that energy and shooting it forward into creating something real. Neptune, on the other hand, is very murky, very lackadaisical, very non-committal, very non-initiatory, I would say, in a lot of ways. Slow to take action in the physical because it's very concerned with the non-physical, the intangible. And so with Neptune in Aries, this can be an energy of that Neptunian imagination, that Neptunian transcendence, that Neptunian connection with something that is beyond this world, this reality, this physicality, and connecting that into taking action on something, right? Because anytime you have a planet in a sign, the energy of that planet is being filtered through that sign that it's in. And so it's kind of like taking these impressionistic downloads, these things that you can't really put into words or in action on a normal transit, on a normal circumstance, and it's actually taking it and turning it into something that you are going to do out in the world very enthusiastically. And then when you combine that with Saturn, yes, Saturn is hindered. Yes, Saturn is having trouble building things that are sustainable and knowing what to build and what to break down. But Neptune is channeling some of its energy through that Saturnian component. And it's already been doing that while it's been transiting Pisces. And so it's now about taking that intangible, taking action on it and making it into something very grounded, very real. And even if you're building it on shaky ground, at least you're building it, right? At least something is being made manifest. And that is that Neptune and Aries energy. Now, the last time Neptune transited the sign of Aries was from April 13th of 1861 through April 7th of 1875. And so nobody watching this should have been alive then. If you were, then, come talk to me. I want to hear how you did it, right? But yeah, so that was a very long time in history. These cycles are not ones that we can, live through more than once. And so this is the only time that we are going to be experiencing Neptune in the sign of Aries in this lifetime, in this incarnation at least. And so It's very important that we use this wisely. And because we've not experienced it before, we don't have a context, a frame of reference. This is brand new to all of us, at least again in this incarnation. Maybe you were alive during the Civil War, you know, in your previous lifetime. Maybe there was another Neptune and Aries cycle that you were present for. But in terms of the here and now, this is it. And so we don't have this like preparation that we have for Saturn being in the sign of Aries, where we've been there, done that. And part of what we're dealing with this time around is the repercussions of what happened last time around. Same thing collectively here with Neptune and Aries. We're going to be dealing with another iteration of what was made manifest last time around at a more global scale, but on a personal level, we're not necessarily dealing with it in that way. And so it's interesting. Aries is also very autonomous, very sovereign, very independent. It is about the individual and carrying forward your independent will. Neptune is about the collective. It's about merging your soul with the souls of everyone else around you. It's about that interdimensional space where all things work in harmony. All things are connected in some way. Everything influences everything else. And it is more of that spirituality. We saw a lot of energy around Neptunian themes of like just more of a new age spirituality, where it was like love and light and let's float around and let's not actually do anything for a very long time with Neptune in the sign of Pisces. Neptune in Aries is very different. It's like the spiritual warrior. That is a very good archetype for Neptune in the sign of Aries in a somewhat positive sense, right? So if you're going to take this and use it for good, this is this compassionate person that is fighting for a cause that benefits the collective, that benefits all, because it knows that everything is connected. This is the person that's acting upon like a higher purpose, a higher calling, this, you know, connection to everything. This is the person that is carrying forth what's in the ethers and pushing it forward into reality. But this is also an idealization energy. So like I mentioned before, Neptune is both the idol and the scapegoat. It's this projection that we have where we're not seeing things clearly. We're projecting what we want to see or what we kind of have internally that we need to project onto other people, things, events. And so with Aries being this energy of the leader, the warrior, the hero, the person who's in charge and who's very ambitious, we're going to see a lot of both idolization of these figures in our reality. We're already starting to see that, right? As we're coming into the ingress, you start to see a little bit of a taste of what's to come. We're going to see that idolization of the hero, the leader, you know, the ambition, the drive, but we're also going to see the scapegoat being the exact same archetype, the exact same type of person. And so on some ends of the spectrum, people will be looking at these types of people, these type of institutions, these types of energies and vilifying them. And really the reality of it with Neptune is not either side. It's not either extreme. It's somewhere in between there because again, we're not seeing it clearly. And so this is just something to kind of have an awareness of on an individual level when we get into the forecast for all 12 signs, because you're going to have a tendency to both idolize and idealize and also vilify and use as a scapegoat the types of energies, entities, institutions, and people that embody the sign of Aries as it relates to the part of your life that's being impacted. And so this will make more sense as we get into it. But I just want you to have that awareness, and you're going to see a lot of this in the collective as well. This energy, so Neptune in Pisces, because Neptune rules like film and fantasy and all of that. There was a lot of like mysticism, spirituality, a lot of occult types of energies around film, around like television, around things like that. There was also very literally the past few years, one of the things I predicted with Saturn in the sign of Pisces especially was a lot of energy around cults, like actual cults. And we saw so many documentaries come out with Saturn and Pisces around cults. Now it's more like this energy around like glorifying but also vilifying like war and violence and aggression, and really looking at these big like leaders and these people that were really like figureheads and things like that. And I think we're going to see a lot more of like the hero and the ambitious energy being more glorified, I think, in the collective and in art and film. So that's one of the things that I'm thinking about with that. The other thing I'm thinking about is kind of what happened the last time around, which obviously the American Civil War was the most obvious. If you've been watching anything anywhere about astrology at all, I'm sure you're aware that basically within 24 hours of Neptune moving into Aries was the exact start of the Civil War in the United States of America. It was, an ideological conflict over very Aries themes: freedom, autonomy, identity. Boundaries were super blurred as like families and friends and cousins and people that actually knew each other were having to fight each other in battle. There was a lot of confusion around, what's what, who's who, all of that. And it was an ideological conflict, and that's very Neptune and Aries, right? The spiritual warrior, or the like warrior that's there to do something that's very conscious and compassionate and like righteous and has this just cause. Like there's very much that energy with Neptune and Aries, but it's also that blurring of boundaries. And anytime we see a lot of Aries energy, for whatever reason, we see a lot around like civil rights and, equality amongst different groups of people. And so that is something that we could see coming back around in a bigger way this time around. But in terms of, do I predict another civil war in the United States? No, I don't. A lot of astrologers are saying that that is possible, and I'm not saying it's not possible, but based on what I'm seeing happening right now in 2025, and based on these combinations of energies of Neptune and Saturn and Aries, I think over the next couple of years, what's going to be blurred and where there's going to be conflict is within the boundaries within North America itself. The boundaries between the US and Canada, US and Mexico, other countries that are in the mix that might be having involvement as well, because we are a more global society, and that's what we're already seeing as the ingress is happening, right? And so I don't think like full scale necessarily war where it's like violent, but I do think that there's an issue here of dissolving of certain boundaries with Neptune and Saturn being in Aries, and wanting to strengthen and build other boundaries within the context of especially North America. And notice that that's not an opinion. I'm just saying that that's what's happening. But I think that that's something that's going to become exacerbated over the next, especially 2.5 to 3 years, while Neptune and Saturn are co-present in Aries, and especially around the time of February of next year, February to March of next year in 2026, because that's when these two energies come to their climax, they come to that conjunction. And so that's something too. The other things that we saw during the last time Neptune transited Aries was it started with the breaking out of the American Civil War. We had the Abraham Lincoln assassination, so kind of like the martyrdom of a big figurehead, a leader. That's very much an Aries thing and a Neptune and Aries thing. And then we had the KKK was formed in 1865. And then at the very end of this era, we ended with the Civil Rights Act of 1875. And so it all kind of came full circle, because that was signed just as Neptune left Aries and moved into the sign of Taurus. And so I think we'll see something, not the exact same thing, obviously, because it's not the same situation right now, but there's going to be this like beginning stage, which is happening right now, where there is externally and on like a wider scale, a blurring of boundaries, but it's different because Saturn's involved. And by the end of this, it's going to be like things coming full circle and coming to a more compassionate resolution. Like that's what I would say is most likely going to happen during the next 14 years. But while Neptune is transiting the sign of Aries, it's not just going to make that conjunction with Saturn on February 20th of 2026. It's also going to be making a sextile with both Uranus and Pluto And this is going to be going on like for so long. So Uranus sextile Neptune, the first pass of this is on August 28th of 2025. So this year, we're already going to start feeling it just as soon as Uranus moves into the sign of Gemini in like, I think May or June is when that comes exact. And then it's going to come exact a bunch of times. So it's going to come exact November 20th of 2025, July 15th of 2026, January 15th of 2027, and then June 6th of 2027. So it's going to come exact 5 times. This is an ongoing energy where the compassion, the energy, this like self-righteous energy, this independence energy, this energy of sovereignty and identity, this energy of boundaries and all of that too, especially at the beginning. All of this is going to be filtered through this Uranus sextile for the first few years, which lightens it, which supports it by creating positive change. And that positive change is going to come through Gemini types of features, through narrative, through technology, right? That's that Uranus energy. And so it softens the blow a little bit. And so that's another reason why I'm not like saying that there's going to be all out civil war. I think that this is going to add this like gentle component that's nudging us into making changes that are not so like earth-shattering. The next thing that's going to be happening, oh, and I want to say the last time that happened, the Uranus sextile to Neptune, was May 12th of 1968. So we saw that same energy in the late 1960s, which was a revolutionary energy, and that is very Uranus, right? And a revolutionary energy that was looking at like the collective, and there was a spiritual movement going on at the same time. So I think that there could be similar vibes going on here. The next thing I see is Neptune sextile Pluto. And so we're already experiencing that as soon as Neptune moves into the sign of Aries, because Pluto's already finally for good in the sign of Aquarius, where it's going to be making that sextile. So you're going to feel this right out the gate. You're going to feel all of this right out the gate pretty much. But on July 24th of 2026, that's the first time that this sextile comes exact. It's going to come exact 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times between 2026 and 2032. And then it won't happen again. This sextile will not happen again until 2337. So 2337. So this is a big one, you guys. Neptune is very much about like the psychic energy. It's very much about the intangible. Like we mentioned before, it transcends our normal reality. And Pluto is a very heavily psychic, really focused energy as well. This is going to be like a lot of enhancement of psychic activity, a lot of interest in psychic activity and paranormal types of activity, I think will increase quite a bit as this is going on, and maybe even technology around tracking these types of things. I would say if like alien disclosure is going to happen, I don't know if that's a real thing, if it's a conspiracy, if it's a psyop, whatever. But whatever is going on around that, I would say that this period here between 2026 especially, but 2025 through 2032 would be the period where that would just be gently released into our reality in a way that's more like it's just normal by the time this is all done. I also really like this energy as just being very supportive of creating and facilitating very precise change that comes from this like collective download, that comes from this understanding of all things being connected, that comes from this like spiritual warrior standpoint, where we're making gentle changes in our lives and we're very focused and like able to actually channel this into something because of that Pluto energy, where it's made manifest very easily. This is something that you can harness really, really well, especially if you have any planets at the beginning degrees of Gemini, of Aries, or of Aquarius. This is going to be your time to shine and your time to manifest. And so that's what's going on for the Saturn and the Neptune energy in the sign of Aries. And so if you want to understand these outer planets, transits, cycles, their placements in your birth chart way more deeply, way more precisely, not just for this transit and this glob of transits that's coming up, but for everything that happens in your entire life, past, present, and future, you're going to want to check out my Mastering the Outer Planets series. The link is down in the description below. This is 5 different like 4.5-hour workshops talks that go deep into each of the outer planets, which are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. It goes into how these show up and how to interpret them in your birth chart, how to calculate and understand your own personal unique cycles that are related to these planets that everybody experiences, but you're going to experience in a certain way depending on how your natal chart is configured. It also goes into transits to these outer planets, but also from these outer planets, so you can predict and understand and navigate all of the most transformative, powerful, major life events in your overall life story, not just now, but for many, many years to come. And of course, you can utilize this to help your friends, your family, and your clients do the same. The link for mastering the outer planets is down in the description below. All right, now let's get into the forecast for all 12 signs, beginning, of course, with Aries and Aries rising. And this forecast is relevant from March of 2025, really through the middle to end of 2028. And so this is an extended forecast for this Neptune-Saturn energy. And we're going to be looking at not just Neptune and Saturn, but we're going to be supported by the energy of Uranus and Pluto and that minor triangle we talked about that's happening with Neptune. And so, as always, make sure you listen to your rising sign, your sun sign, and your moon sign to get a more holistic overview of the energy for the next, 3 years ahead? Your rising sign will be the most predominant energy, your sun sign will be secondary, and your moon sign is important to listen to as well, although this energy will be more internalized and subjective. For Aries and for Aries rising, this is happening in your sign. You are going through a dissolving of your old way of being. This is going to be a bit of an identity crisis for a lot of Aries rising and sun sign people in particular, where the way that you once were is going to become dissolved. You're not going to understand who you are anymore out in the world, and people are going to not be seeing you quite as clearly. You're going to be on the receiving end of a lot of projection, a lot of guru-like energy where they're like, Aries, you're so wonderful. You're such a strong leader. We love you, even if you don't do anything to warrant it. But you're also going to be on the receiving end of a lot of scapegoated energy, projections from people who, maybe want to blame you for things that are not necessarily your fault or have nothing to do with you. That's going to be a big thing over the course of the next few years. Also, with Neptune coming into your sign, it makes you much more sensitive to all things. And so, especially because Saturn's there, and Saturn is this like restrictive, limiting, almost like a weakening effect on the physical body. And even though normally Saturn would be like adding boundaries, adding resiliency, working really hard on creating better health for yourself, which it absolutely can still be, there's this energy here of breaking down boundaries. There's this energy here in the first house, especially, where it could deplete your vitality in a lot of ways, where you're going to have to work harder to create better routines for yourself when it comes to your health, when it comes to your eating, when it comes to your exercise, and when it comes to your actual energetic and emotional boundaries with people. Because with Neptune in the mix, you're going to be feeling everyone's stuff and picking up on everyone's stuff. And for the next 14 years, really, it's going to be very hard for you to discern what's yours and what's not yours. Part of this process over the next 14 years is going to be getting in touch more deeply with your intuition, getting in touch more deeply with these other dimensional realities, with this etheric energy that Neptune brings into the mix, but also learning how to create those boundaries, especially in these first few years, so it doesn't overpower you, so other people's stuff doesn't become you, so you don't take it on and become them because you're getting caught up in their energy. This is also an energy of being much more sensitive, like from a medical astrology standpoint, to very literal like physical toxins, physical things in your environment, cleaning products, synthetic fragrances, EMFs even, foods that are not necessarily the best. You're going to learn to be very discerning about what it is that you put into your body, because your body's going to be telling you. Your body's going to force you to do it. And so this is going to be a process of cleansing and breaking down all of these old structures, all of these old habits that have been holding you back physically. This is also about you becoming someone new. So the Saturn energy in the mix is all about breaking down old structures around your identity, around your personality, around your life story, around the major life themes and events that have created who you are in this moment. Taking responsibility for your role in creating the situation that you're in if you don't want to be in that situation anymore, and looking how you can work on creating something new. One of my teachers, Robert Phoenix, always talked about these Saturn transits being like if you had an orange and you put it into one of those juice things and you get like all of the wonderful juice, all of the nectar, all of the rewards from the hard work that you've been putting in over these last 30 years. But then you also have this excess, this rind, and you have to figure out how to get rid of it. Like, do you throw it away? Do you compost it? What are you going to do with this? Do you take the orange peel and use it for something? And so that's kind of where you're at in terms of just your whole life and your whole identity right now. So it's a big thing. You're going to have a lot of support over these next few years from your friends, your group associations, your community, through communication and through your relationships. You are going to get through this in the best possible way. And definitely leaning on the people that you surround yourself with is going to be very fortuitous and very fruitful for you. And then for Taurus and for Taurus rising, this energy of Neptune and Saturn is happening in your 12th house. This is the house of seclusion, solitude, secrets, things that are hiding behind the scenes and behind closed doors, things that you can't see overtly that are part of your unconscious and subconscious reality. This for you is going to be a deep internal dive. You might find yourself, especially over these first 3 years of the Neptune transit while Saturn's there, spending more time in solitude, seclusion, contemplation. You're working on something behind the scenes. There's a big karmic reckoning and a big restructuring where you are letting go of old patterns, old paradigms, old spiritual practices and spiritual belief systems, old things that are not necessarily attached to you from this lifetime, but maybe from previous incarnations, because the 12th house is the house that's most closely associated with past life experience. This is also where what you're doing behind the scenes, this spiritual work, this spiritual discipline that you are taking on over these next 3 years, because that's really the best way to utilize this energy. If you are not forced into solitude, take that time for yourself and learn a spiritual discipline. Channel this energy in a very productive, structured way, and you will be rewarded for that. But as you're going through this process, you will be able to channel this energy into really transforming something really powerful in your work and really transforming and changing something very powerfully when it comes to your finances. But you have to do the inner work. You have to let go of that karmic baggage. You have to let go of those cycles and beliefs from your past and maybe from your past lives that are no longer of service. There could also be, over the next few years, very murky, nebulous, and confusing situations that come through people hiding things from you, keeping secrets from you, where you realize that you have to kind of have a reckoning with that. You have to create better boundaries around that. There could also be energy here around hospitals, rehabilitation centers, prisons, spiritual retreat centers, where there's this energy of challenge or difficulty coming from those institutions for a small subset of you where it's applicable. But for the most part, this is a deep channeling of looking at your spiritual world, your inner world, your dream world, and creating some sort of structure or form around that. For Gemini and Gemini rising, you are going to be having some very interesting and strange experiences involving your friends, your group associations, your social networks, and the people that you surround yourself with by choice over these next 3 years. This is some high strange energy. This is a really great time for you to get involved very intentionally with building some sort of spiritual community or spiritual group or spiritual support system within your social circle. But this is also a time where those friends that are not necessarily there for you, that are not responsible, that are not going to show up and actually be of help to you in any way, shape, or form when you need it most, those friendships are going to break away and fall away. You're going to only have the most compassionate, loving, interconnected, and responsible and grounded friendships moving forward. You're going to see who's there to just be a drinking buddy, who's there to just take advantage of you, and who is there for the long term. Who are your ride or die people? Who are the people that you're going to bring with you over the next 30 years? Because these are foundational people to your experience, to your group, to your network, to your community. And so this is a big part of this process moving forward. There are going to be a lot of boundary issues coming up around friendships over these next few years, especially the first 3 while Neptune is with Saturn, where you're going to have to take a good hard look at which boundaries with your social circle need to be dissolved and which ones need to be rebuilt or built fresh, and who you need to cut out of your life and who is maybe lying to you or deceiving you, or where you are deceiving yourself by seeing what you want to see in your friendships. relationships, where you're martyring someone, where you're scapegoating them, where you're idealizing a certain group or community that really doesn't deserve it. These are all things that you're going to be coming to terms with and reckoning with over these next few years. This is also, again, a really great time for you to connect with like religious value systems, philosophies, ideologies, spiritual groups that can help facilitate that deeper wisdom and that deeper connection, and that are more action oriented. I would actually say a lot of Gemini people are going to have this like revolutionary energy where you want to shake things up. You want to make the change. You want to be the change you want to see in the world. And you want to find that group where it's like this group of spiritual warriors. That's very much that archetype that we've been talking about throughout this video. This group of spiritual warriors that want to create something and build something and take action on something that is very deeply aligned with your value systems, with your belief systems, with the things that you hold true. And this is going to be part of that energy of Uranus transiting your sign because it's part of this configuration, Gemini. And so you are here to shake things up over these next few years and to find the right people to help you do so. But make sure you're seeing them clearly, because you might get yourself in with the wrong crowd and not realize it until it's way too late and you're a few years down the line. So be as discerning as you can in these situations, but definitely embrace it because you need to. For Cancer and for Cancer rising, you are going through a major breakdown, breakthrough, rebuilding, restructuring when it comes to your career, your public reputation, and the legacy that you leave behind after your working years, the impact that you make on the world around you, even if you're not somebody who's working or career driven in any way, does not matter. There is an impact that you're here to make. You can feel it, you can sense it. There is this compassionate spiritual warrior energy that's ready to break free and ready to come out and ready to make some change in a very tangible, real way out in the world. If you are somebody who is working and in a career right now, there could be some major changes going on here. You're going to be looking at boundary issues when it comes to your work, when it comes to your work-life balance, when it comes to your bosses, your superiors, when it comes to your business, if you're somebody who runs a business. There is a need here to dissolve old boundaries that you had when it comes to what you put out there into the world for public consumption and to create new ones. There's firmer boundaries that need to be made in certain circumstances, and there's a lessening of boundaries that needs to be made in others. There's also going to be a lot of murkiness and nebulousness when it comes to what it is that you are actually trying to create out there in the world, where you're going to be having to troubleshoot it, where it's going to feel one way and then it's going to go another way, where there is going to be like a certain level of mix-ups and misunderstandings along the way to create that structure. And the structure you create, if you do it too fast, Cancer, it's going to crumble in just a few years when Saturn comes into your sign. And so you want to make sure that, yes, you're trucking along over these next 3 years. There are things that you need to build. There are things that you need to break down. There are actions that you definitely need to take to create the foundation for the future you want for your career moving forward. But if you rush it too much, if you are hasty in your application, that's going to come back to bite you, but not right away. It'll take time. And so make sure you're aware of that too. This is a beautiful energy where your spiritual practices, the sort of strange and unseen things that you study and practice and do behind the scenes, behind closed doors, will inform the decision making that you're having to engage in your career and public reputation, in what you're putting out there in the world. And also, there's a lot of really good energy here where if you do this right, money can be channeled. There's like a powerful energy where money is being channeled to and from the 8th house, which means that you could have investors that actually want to help you restructure or rebuild a certain idea, a certain business. You could have investments that come as a result of the hard work that you're putting in to restructuring and creating something that's more compassionate, that's more aligned, that works for your value systems out in the world with your career. For Leo and for Leo rising, this energy is a breaking down of old dogmatic beliefs, ideologies, religious value systems, philosophical value systems that are no longer serving you, things that you've held on to that you're realizing are not necessarily true, or that there are other truths, that things are not exactly as they seem. Not everything is straightforward. Not everything is tangible. Not everything is logical and rational. There's no rules when it comes to the things that you need to adhere to when it comes to these philosophies, when it comes to these religious value systems, or at least the old rules no longer apply. This is a time for a very spiritual deep dive. This is the time to really get clear on what you value and to dissolve those old structures that are too dogmatic. This is a really great time for spiritual exploration and spiritual study over these next few years, and you personally will benefit very greatly from that. There could be a lot of very challenging and murky situations that come up for you over these next especially 3 years, involving travel, foreign countries, foreign entities, people who are in foreign countries, where it can be very hard to discern and figure out what's exactly going on here, where you might need to rely on your friends, on your partner, on other people for help and for assistance, and those people will show up. There is a need to lean on others when it comes to these murky situations, and when it comes to murkiness around your beliefs, because there is going to be this kind of like revelation, this breaking down of these old ideologies where your ego might get in the way, or you might not know exactly what you believe, and it might be a bit of an identity crisis in that way. Your friends, your group associations, finding a group of people that are very open-minded, that think very differently than you even do, that have like ideas that are wild and outrageous to you, that is going to be a really great way to open your mind to the things and the concepts that you need to integrate. And also leaning on partnership, that's going to be really great as well. This is also a time to link your partnerships, link your close personal connections with your integrity. So you're not going to be out of integrity with any of your connections and relationships moving forward after this. There could also be like a lot of strangeness and challenge, like I said before, around travel plans and connections with foreign entities and foreign countries. I would say that traveling with friends or traveling with a partner is much better than traveling alone during this time, just because you're going to need someone with like a clear head and solid ground to lean on. And there could be plans that you set out to create for yourself involving travel, or involving even like higher education and going back to school, where it doesn't work out exactly as it seems. What you think you see, what you think you know, what you think you're doing in this area is not going to be what's happening in the end. It's not going to bring the end result. It's going to be different than what you think it is when all is said and done, because you are going through this dissolving and this restructuring. For Virgo and for Virgo rising, this energy is happening in your 8th house, which is the house of death, rebirth, psychological issues, trauma, fear. And this is going to be a house and a period for you of a deep psychological healing that reverberates into the physical. And so for a lot of Virgos and Virgo rising, there's going to be like a reckoning, a dark night of the soul that leads to a very transformative experience that reverberates out into greater physical resiliency, a miraculous healing even for some people, where if you go in, you dive deep, you face the things that you are the most fearful of, even if they're murky, even if you don't quite understand what's going on, it is going to benefit you in a very tangible physical way. This is also an energy where seeking out help, like somebody who has like a more structured approach, but is very open-minded and maybe more spiritually oriented for some sort of therapeutic intervention, some sort of like psychological therapy, that is going to be huge for a lot of you. There's also an energy here where there's big changes going on or starting in your career and public reputation, and that's going to reverberate into what you value in changing things up and dissolving old structures when it comes to your finances, because the 8th house is also the house of debt, joint finances, taxes, investments, inheritance, other people's money, and there is a dissolving of old structures here. Maybe the boundaries with you and your partner's money, so if you are married with your spouse, maybe the boundaries and the structures behind the way that you guys deal with your finances as a couple, those are going to be dissolving and being rebuilt in some way. Maybe there's new boundaries that need to be had in other financial sectors of your life. The way that you dealt with your money before is going to have to change, and that might come through this obvious struggle, this obvious fear, this obvious murkiness around your financial stability moving forward, where you realize you have to take action now, or else you're not going to benefit in the way that you thought that you would moving forward financially. And this is going to, for those of you who are working, this is going to be tied into big major changes that you're making with the structure of your business, the structure of your career, the legacy that you're leaving behind after your working years. If you're somebody who's retired, this is very much about looking at your like your will, your living trust, the inheritance, your life insurance policies, and the very physical legacy that you leave behind, but also the impact that you've made on the world so far and how you can shift things or even utilize your finances to create the change that you want to create out in the world while you still have time to do it. There's a lot of energy here where there's going to be a big transformation in the area of work, health and daily routines, but especially work, career, and money. This is where the big change is happening over these next few years. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be tough for the first couple of years, but the payoff is going to be immense. And so a lot can happen that is going to be very beneficial for you. For Libra and for Libra rising, this energy of Neptune and Saturn is in your 7th house, which is the house of relationships. Relationships are about to get weird. There's some murkiness going on here. You just came out of a period of eclipses in your 7th house. And so I'm sure you've already gone through a lot of shift and change and very destined and fated feeling transformations when it comes to your closest relationships, when it comes to your love relationships especially. Now things are feeling kind of odd. It's kind of like, okay, I've been through this. I've gone through this transformation. I'm not who I was at the beginning. My relationships are not the same as they were at the beginning. Now what? Now I'm confused about what to rebuild. Now I don't know where the boundaries lie between me and my partner. Now I don't know what type of relationship I want to build moving forward with my partner or with a new partner, even if that's applicable to you. There is this period of having to figure out what you want to create moving forward, and also looking at your responsibility in creating the situation that you're currently in your closest relationships right now. If you're single and you don't want to be, what is your role in creating that situation? Because it takes two, right? It's not always that everything's your fault. That's not what I'm saying. But you have a choice in the way that you respond to the situations that are unfolding in your life. And how did you respond? And how did that play into what you're experiencing right now? And how can you work to do different moving forward? So that's a big kind of question that you're going to be asking yourself. This is a period though, especially over these first few years, because of the minor like little triangle that's happening with Pluto and Uranus, there is an energy here of a deepening of intimacy in your connections, having really good like romantic and sexual connections with your partner. And it's just a matter of setting the foundation so it's long lasting, it's stable, it feels safe, but also loosening the boundaries where your boundaries have been too tight in your relationships. For Scorpio and for Scorpio rising, for Scorpio, this energy is happening in your 6th house, which is the house of health, work, daily routines, pets, animals, service, so many things. And so for you, there's going to be a lot of murkiness and confusion around these areas of life. And so there's something here, there's an old structure, an old paradigm, an old way of dealing with your day-to-day reality that needs to be dissolved, that needs to be opened up to fantasy, to illusion, to compassion, to new downloads, to a new experience of interconnectedness, where maybe you were very ambitious, very go, very Aries in your working life. And now it's kind of like, okay, how do I let my imagination take hold? How do I bring in my spirituality into the work that I'm doing? This is also a dissolving of old boundaries when it comes to your health, and a building of new situations and new boundaries where you're going to be having to work harder on your health and your nutrition, especially your day-to-day exercise routines, your day-to-day health routines, your day-to-day nutrition, your day-to-day eating routines. Like, these are things that you're really going to be thinking about and having to work harder on in order to create a better situation for yourself, for your health moving forward over these next few years. However, it's not just about the physical. This is where you're realizing that you could take all the supplements, you could do all the right things, you could do the right workouts at the right times, and still something is missing. Still something is preventing you from fully healing, from fully thriving in your body. If that's the case, then there is a spiritual component, an energetic component, a non-physical component that is missing. And that is what you're going to be discovering, not just over these next 3 years, but over the next 14 years as Neptune transits the sign of Aries. You're going to get a lot of healing that's going to come through revelations and changes in your psychology, in your mindset, a lot of psychological healing that leads to physical healing breakthroughs, and a lot of ancestral karmic healing with your family lineage that again is going to lead to physical healing breakthroughs. For Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising, Neptune and Saturn are transiting your 5th house, which is the house of joy, love, romance, play, children. It's the house where you go to do the things that you love to do because you love to do them, simply because they bring you joy. And so this is a beautiful energy in a lot of ways, but it's also challenging. So there is this energy here of needing to break down old rules, regulations, structures that you've placed around your joy, perimeters that you've placed around your ability to have fun, to play, to engage in your hobbies, to do the things that you love. There's also potentially going to be some challenge or some murkiness going on around children, if you have any, where your relationship with your children is changing. The boundaries between you and your children are changing. You need to dissolve some boundaries and create and facilitate new ones. And if you do it too hastily, that's going to come back and bite you in that relationship later on. And so you want to make sure that you're very clear about what you're putting in place in terms of new rules, new boundaries, and what you're dissolving and why. Because if that foundation is created impulsively because your child acted out and now you need to like make that rule and you need to do that thing, about 7.5 years down the line, you're going to look back and be like, why did I do that? Even if it seems like it's not something big in the moment. So you want to make sure that you're doing things the right way and not the fast way, and really thinking things through. This is also a really interesting time where you can embrace hobbies that are much more spiritual in nature and take that spirituality, that spiritual discipline, and convert it into something that is more creative, that's more expressive, that maybe even functions as some sort of like business or something like that. There is this energy of taking something creative, taking action on it, and making it very tangible because it's fun for you, but also because you want to put something out into the world. You want to create something. And the 5th house is the house of entrepreneurs. I love this energy for positive changes that are going on in your romantic life, in your one-to-one relationships, in your marriage, if you're married. I love this for developing deeper roots and deeper relationships in your community that are going to be born out of this place of love and joy and self-expression. And so there is a lot of good coming, but there's going to be some confusion along the way. For Capricorn and Capricorn rising, this energy of Saturn and Neptune in the conjunction is happening in your 4th house, which is the house of home, family, property, and real estate. This is a lot of interesting, murky energy. So there's going to be a lot of confusion going on, Capricorn, not just in your home life, not just in your family dynamics, but on a personal level, on a one-to-one level, with your partner, with your significant other, with the people that you're closest to in your life. There is some murkiness going on here because this is squaring your ascendant, sun, or moon. And especially if you're a Capricorn rising, this is going to impact a lot, where the foundations of your life, the structures that build the framework for your life, are being dissolved and reconfigured. And it's happening kind of behind the scenes. It's happening from the bottom up. It's happening from your home life, your family life, your early childhood experiences that are reverberating into this moment. And that's kind of filtering out and spilling out into everything. And so for you in particular, looking at family dynamics and family relationships, that's going to be the first thing. So looking at where you need to dissolve old boundaries, where compassion is going to come in, where you want to maybe fight for someone or fight for a cause within that family dynamic or that family lineage, where you want to create better boundaries with your family, but do it in a way that's really solid, where you're thinking it through, because there's going to be a confusion about which boundaries to take back and which boundaries to create. There's going to be confusion about how to create these boundaries, when to create these boundaries. There's going to be like this intense need at certain points in time where you're feeling too sensitive and you're going to want to just shut that down and put that boundary in place right then and there. But maybe you've done it in haste and later on that comes back to bite you. So you want to make sure that you're being discerning with your family. There's also something going on here where you need a major change in your home and living situation, where you might need to reconfigure something and dissolve something like an old idea or old rules that you've placed around yourself, around where you can live, parameters around your home life, right? And this could also be taking a fantasy, a vision about your living situation, like where you want to live, where you have this beautiful, grandiose vision of it. And it's like this wonderful thing that you don't think you can have. It's just a fantasy. Looking at how you can actually work on taking the steps to take that fantasy for your home life and turn it into reality. That is another really beautiful way. And if you do that and you take the necessary steps every single day to get there, there is the potential for money to come in to facilitate that change, to facilitate cultivate that foundation, to grow in the right direction, even if it doesn't happen right this second. There's definite potential there. There's also something going on here where there's a murkiness around maybe a property situation that could become profitable if you are to do it the right way, but it's confusing about how to get there. So that's another thing that could be going on for some people. The money will come though, and this is going to be a good investment for you. So that's what I see for Capricorn. Another thing could be looking at work-life balance, making changes to your day-to-day work experience, the changes to the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis in order to reconfigure what's going on behind the scenes in your home life, and that will reverberate into making changes in yourself, in your relationships, in your marriage, in your career. And so that's what's going on for Capricorn. You're going through a major dissolving and rebuilding phase. And for Aquarius and for Aquarius rising, you're going to be dealing with a lot of energy around negative self-talk and figuring out where the heck that's even coming from. There is this energy here where thoughts and ideas are coming in from outside sources through podcasts, through emails, through marketing messaging, through your community and the things that you pick up in casual conversation that are sticking with you, and you're ruminating on them and you're not really sure where this is coming from. This is an energy of restructuring your boundaries around the information that you take in, your information diet, which is already a thing that is very important for the health of any Aquarius and the well-being of any Aquarius, because you are an air sign. This is about looking at that book that you're reading and whether or not that makes you feel good or bad. That person that you have those conversations with on your commute to work or casually while you're in the neighborhood or in the office, and whether or not those conversations are facilitating positive energy, positive growth, things that are actually tangible and real, or whether it's causing you to have a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of like weird thoughts about things. This is where you're going to be very discerning about where you place your mental energy and what energy and information you take in from external sources. This is also a really great time for you to look to external sources of information and wisdom around things like spiritual disciplines, spiritual practices, creativity. If there is something really creative that you've been wanting to learn to do, especially if it's more mental, more cerebral, and you want to get a structure around it, now's a really great time for you to do that. There is a good energy here for you overall, though. It's almost as if there's like this rebuilding of boundaries, or this change in your boundaries on that mental plane, and like what you're taking in, who you're conversing with, what you're watching, what you're ingesting on that sort of intellectual level, and how that relates to the way that you communicate with other people. This is going to facilitate much stronger, much more compassionate, much more long-lasting relationships and connections, especially one-on-one moving forward. And this is a great energy for facilitating excitement, passion, new energy and romance that lasts long term, and that creates this like deep, compassionate soul connection with other people. And so if you're already in partnership, I love this for facilitating better communication and allowing that to reverberate into your relationship and the longevity of your relationship overall. I like this because of the sextile to Uranus in your 5th house for shaking things up romantically. And also, this is just going to impact you personally. Like Pluto on the ascendant, you're going to be very laser focused on only the things that are very aligned with your values, with your truth, that are aligned with your deepest and truest desires. And getting rid of all of that mental riffraff is going to be a big part of it. And for Pisces and for Pisces rising. So for Pisces, this energy is happening in your 2nd house, which is the house of money. Finances are going to be a little confusing, a little murky, but not bad, because you're supported in a lot of ways. You have support that's hidden from behind the scenes, from past life experiences and things that you've learned in those previous incarnation cycles, but you also are going to have unexpected support in the way of family, in the way of your roots, in the way of maybe even a property that brings in extra income or extra cash for you. And so I do like this energy for that. For some Pisces, it could be that your finances are murky and a little confusing and a little restricted because you're saving for buying a home, putting a down payment on something, moving, because there is an energy here of needing to make a change when it comes to your home, your living situation, your roots. But the path to get there financially could be a little bit confusing. That doesn't mean that you can't do it. It's about channeling that energy. It's about figuring it out intuitively, and then from there taking that vision and taking the action steps, the immediate action steps that are necessary to build that foundation for doing the thing that you want to do in the future, because you'll have a few years where this is going to be in the mix, where you can get yourself ready now while Saturn's involved, by laying the right foundations, by contacting a financial advisor, by saving your money, by whatever it is that you need to do, selling that thing that you don't need, in order to facilitate the foundations for the change that you want to make when it comes to your living situation. If you want to move somewhere, if you want to start a family, if you want to shake things up in some way. And so I really like this energy for that. Don't let fear get the best of you. So if there is fear or anxiety or like a murkiness that is unsettling around your financial situation, not just right now, but over the next few years, it's not always coming from you. Turn off the news, turn off social media, stop reading the things that are making you feel that way. Be very discerning about who you put yourself around when it comes to your financial goals and plans, who you ask advice from, and who you listen to, again, like externally or even like a one-to-one financial advisor situation. You want to be very clear about your energy around this, and doing things that are very energetic are going to facilitate more money coming in. So like doing the visualization exercises, doing the money magic, the manifestation stuff, but also taking action on it, because you have to do the real and tangible things. You have to crunch the numbers, you have to see it, you have to visualize it, you have to embody it, you have to do all the woo, but then you have to crunch the numbers, you have to get yourself like somebody who can help you if you don't know how to, figure it all out yourself. You need to create a budget and stick to it, and you need to slow and steady save your money, put money away, invest it to do the thing that you want to do. For some of you, your money could be restricted because you're buying something right now, and again, you're still going to have to do that same thing. So it also doesn't mean that your money's restricted. It could be that you're working really hard on paying off debts and you're starting to feel that freedom, that liberation. It could be that you're working really hard on actually saving for the first time. And again, you're not spending as much money wildly, but the money that you're saving is feeling really good. For some of you, it might feel like money's kind of slipping through your fingertips because of that Neptunian energy. So in order to prevent that from happening, you have to have a plan and you have to stick to that plan. That's the Saturn component of it. So if you do that now, the rest of the 14 years, so the next 11 years or so after Saturn leaves the sign of Aries, will be much easier for you financially, because you created a structure, you stuck to a plan, and so the money won't just kind of dissolve and flow away. Because what tends to happen when you have Neptune in the second house transiting is that money's always there when you need it. You will not be completely without, but it's only there when you need it, and then it just kind of slips through your fingertips. It liquefies and then dissolves, and then it's like, well, where'd it go? Oh, but more's coming in, but where'd it go? Like, it's hard to hold on to the money. So Saturn's helping you create the structure so that way you can hold on to the money even after Saturn has left. And so this is going to be a big part of that for you, and that's what's going on for Pisces. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like it, comment below and let me know what you're experiencing so far during these transits, and share this with a friend if you feel like they could benefit from the information that I share with you today. And of course, subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy these forecasts and videos that are floating around up here. So I hope you watch one of them, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.